God's chosen ones. This message isn't a coincidence. It's not the algorithm. It's not luck. It's a divine intervention. You didn't stumble across this by chance. Heaven brought you here on purpose, right now, for a reason. Take a breath. Silence the noise around you. This is sacred ground. There's something pulling on you, deep in your soul. A battle you've been fighting in silence, one that no one else seems to see. You've tried to pray it away. You've tried to fight it off. But the craving keeps coming back. That overwhelming sexual desire that seems to rise out of nowhere and tries to consume you like fire in your bones. Have you ever asked yourself, why? Comment 777 if you felt this war raging inside you but couldn't explain it to anyone. You're not alone, you're not weak, and most importantly, you're not crazy. This is not just lust. This is not just impulse. This is warfare, and you are the target. Why? Because you are chosen. Because there is something holy inside of you that the enemy has been trying to steal, corrupt, and distract since the moment you were born. That desire is being weaponized, not to awaken you, but to enslave you. You feel it, don't you? The pull between your calling and your craving. To those of you who have supported us through Super Thanks, your love is not unnoticed. Your support has helped bring this message of truth and freedom to countless others. Thank you. From the depths of our hearts, thank you for believing in this mission, for fueling this light in the middle of a spiritual battlefield. Now ask yourself, why does the enemy always target your purity first? Why is your sexual energy the first thing he tries to twist? Could it be because it holds the key to your identity, your power, your divine assignment? Think about it. Every prophet, every king, every chosen vessel in the Bible had to confront this very battle. Joseph ran from temptation and rose to the palace. David gave in, and the consequences followed him for years. What will your story be? Let's go deeper. Let's expose the dark spiritual forces behind the lust you feel. Let's reclaim what hell has tried to take from you. You were never meant to be a slave to desire. You were meant to walk in authority, purity, and power. This isn't just a video, it's your deliverance. Are you ready? God's chosen ones, that sexual desire that dominates you, is not random. It's spiritual warfare. You've always felt it, haven't you? That pull, that longing, that powerful surge of sexual desire that sometimes feels too strong to resist. But what if I told you, this force isn't just biological, it's not just hormones or instinct. It's a spiritual strategy, a well-calculated assault on your essence. That craving that rises in you isn't random, it's a targeted frequency, designed not to satisfy, but to weaken. Because you, God's chosen one, carry something the enemy fears, divine fire. From the moment you entered this world, the forces of darkness took notice. They recognized what even you hadn't yet remembered. You were marked by heaven, chosen to awaken, to rise, and to lead others into truth. And so the war began, not with swords or flames, but with seduction. If they couldn't destroy you, they would distract you. If they couldn't chain your hands, they'd try to chain your desires. Can you feel it now? The subtle attacks wrapped in pleasure, in entertainment, in culture. The Apostle Paul warned of this when he wrote in Galatians 5:17, "For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh." That is the battle you've been fighting, often in silence. Not just with lust, but with your very identity. While others watched the world and blended in, you saw beneath the surface. Even as a child, you felt things others couldn't name. You could sense lies wrapped in charm, pain behind a smile, corruption disguised as power. And you asked questions, deep questions. while everyone else stayed comfortably numb. I once met a woman named Leora, a gifted visual artist from Argentina whose paintings could stir the soul. But what few knew was that for years she battled with an overwhelming compulsion towards sexual indulgence, not out of pleasure, but as escape. Until one day, in a quiet chapel, she felt the Spirit whisper, "You are not what you crave. You are what you were created for." That moment rewired her. She began to fast, to paint visions from God, and eventually built a sanctuary for others struggling silently. Her art, once sensual, became sacred. The enemy is strategic. He cloaks the attack in music that loops in your head, in images that show up uninvited, in apps designed to steal your focus. Why? Because a chosen one in full alignment is untouchable. When your energy is sealed, your body pure, your mind disciplined, your authority becomes terrifying to the realms of darkness. King David, mighty, anointed, beloved by God, fell to this same battlefield. His desire for Bathsheba wasn't just about beauty, it was a moment when he let down his spiritual guard. And what followed was chaos, deception, murder, and grief. But David repented. He cried out in Psalm 51, verse 10, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me." That's what you're being called to now. Not guilt, not shame, but restoration. Have you noticed what happens after you give in to certain habits? How the light inside you dims, how your clarity dissolves, how your energy scatters. That's not coincidence. That's cause and effect in the Spirit. You're learning now, becoming more sensitive, more discerning. That awareness is not weakness, it is power. Because once you begin to recognize how the enemy operates, he can no longer use the same trap twice. There's a man named Elias, a quiet janitor at a church in Detroit. Nobody knew that for years he had been battling pornography. He never told a soul. But one night, after crying on the floor of that empty sanctuary, he decided to start every morning with prayer and every night with scripture. 2 years later, without any platform or microphone, he became the spiritual mentor to half the congregation. He never preached, but his peace was contagious. That's the quiet power of a chosen one who's won the war within. You may also find inspiration in the story of Justin Bieber. Known globally as a pop star with millions of fans, Justin once lived in a whirlwind of fame, temptation, and impulsive indulgence. But after years of struggling with internal battles, he turned toward faith and began rebuilding his life with intentional purity and spiritual discipline. In an interview, he confessed that practicing celibacy before marrying his wife helped him reconnect with God and regain clarity. He said, "It's not easy, but it's worth it." God doesn't ask us to deny ourselves because he's punishing us. He does it because he loves us. His journey reminds many that even in the public eye, God's call to purity is real, and his grace is transformative. And what about you? Are you starting to notice how your body responds differently to purity now? How your dreams shift when you stay disciplined? This is the awakening, not just of your spirit, but of your authority. You are not at the mercy of your desires. You are the gatekeeper of your temple. Your urges do not define you. Your obedience does. This isn't just your struggle, it's your training ground. And when you master this battlefield, you don't just win for yourself. You unlock healing for others. Your restraint becomes revelation. Your discipline becomes deliverance, because you were never called to blend in. You were called to burn, not with lust, but with purpose. And that's why hell trembles when you walk in purity. There's a reason that hunger inside you won't leave. A reason fleeting pleasures don't satisfy you the way they once did. You try to indulge, to numb, to forget, but it doesn't work anymore. Not like it used to. Because your soul is shedding the illusion. You're no longer able to blend into a world built to distract. That ache inside isn't weakness, it's awakening. The louder the noise gets, the clearer your calling becomes. Can you feel it? That restlessness, that inner pull towards something more. The things that once made you feel alive now feel empty. The parties, the scrolling, the shallow validation, they fall flat. Why? Because you weren't made to survive in chains. You were born to break them. You weren't sent here to be comfortable. You were sent to awaken the fire within. And yes, the breaking hurts. You're not just walking away from a habit, you're dismantling a spell. The Bible is filled with people who had to tear down idols to find their true identity. Consider Moses. Raised in Pharaoh's palace, surrounded by privilege, he could have lived a life of luxury, but something in him refused to stay asleep. Hebrews 11:25 tells us he chose to be mistreated along with the people of God, rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. You're being called to that same courage, to reject what is easy and choose what is eternal. Spiritual warfare doesn't always come with horns and shadows. Sometimes it wears a smile. Sometimes it looks like a harmless scroll on your phone, a perfectly timed ad, a sudden urge, a whisper that says, "Just one more time, no one will know." But in that quiet battlefield, when you choose to say no, something shifts. A chain breaks, a stronghold weakens, and you rise. Sexual energy is not sin. It's sacred. It's your creative force. But the enemy knows that if you ever learn how to harness it, how to direct it into vision, into calling, into spiritual power, you will become unstoppable. You become, in every sense, dangerous, not because of your body, but because of your consciousness. The moment you decide to live fully awake, the system that thrives on your distraction begins to tremble. Throughout time, those who mastered their desires became legends, not because they were perfect, but because they chose discipline over indulgence. Jesus himself, tempted in the wilderness, didn't fight back with force. He fought with truth. He said in Matthew 4:4, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." He understood the test wasn't about hunger, it was about identity. You are not here to be consumed by the world, you are here to transform it. Take Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, whose book Man's Search for Meaning changed the world. He once said, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose." He found clarity in the middle of hell, and you, God's chosen one, can find strength in the middle of your temptation. Let me tell you about Amari. Just a few months ago, he was lost in a cycle of hookups and self-hatred. On the outside, he looked confident. Designer clothes, sharp humor, endless friends, but inside, he was exhausted. Then one night, after deleting yet another dating app in frustration, he whispered a prayer he barely believed in. "God, if you're real, wake me up." That night he dreamed of fire, not flames of punishment, but of refinement. The next morning he felt different, hungrier, clearer. He hasn't been perfect, but every day since he's been saying yes to discipline and no to distraction. His glow is different now. His spirit is quiet but fierce. You have that same fire. It was never gone. It was just buried under the noise. There's a reason the Desert Fathers fasted, a reason monks practiced silence, a reason warriors in Scripture often retreated before the battle, because stillness sharpens the spirit, because restraint reveals power. Proverbs 25:28 says, "Like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. But when you rebuild those walls, you become a fortress, holy, whole, untouchable. You might fall, you might stumble. That does not mean you've failed. You're not broken, you're being built. Every desire that comes against you is an opportunity to choose eternity over impulse. Every craving is a crossroad, and every victory, no matter how small, rebuilds you stronger. So next time the wave hits, pause, breathe. Don't run from the feeling. Feel it fully. Let it pass through you like wind. Then rise, because every time you rise above it, you reclaim a part of your soul that was almost lost. You are not weak because you feel. You are strong because you fight. You are not behind. You are becoming. And that desire that once tried to dominate you, it now bows to the truth of who you are. You are God's chosen one, and you were never meant to stay asleep. Your awakening doesn't arrive gently. It won't whisper you into comfort or let you glide peacefully into a new life. No, this kind of transformation is messy. It shakes the ground beneath your feet. It cracks the version of you that was built for survival, not destiny. That trembling you feel? That's not fear. That's your soul being rewired. Your alignment with heaven is being restored. And if your body has been restless, if your thoughts have been pulling you in 10 different directions, if you felt like the world doesn't make sense anymore, that's not madness. That's spiritual awakening. You are not broken. You are being born again from the inside out. You are not alone. You are chosen. And if these words feel like they've been written just for you, it's because your spirit already recognized the truth long before your mind caught up. You were never created to be a slave to your urges. You were created to master them. Every urge is a signal. Every craving is a test. When you shift from chasing pleasure to seeking purpose, you change everything. Not just for yourself, but for every generation that comes after you. That's why you're not drawn to the same things others are anymore. That's why parties don't excite you, meaningless scrolling leaves you empty, and shallow relationships no longer fit, because your soul has outgrown the old patterns. While the world chases pleasure, you've begun chasing God's plan. While others numb the fire, you're learning to walk through it. Do you remember Samson, a man anointed from birth with supernatural strength, but bound by his inability to master his desires? Delilah didn't just cut his hair, she cut his connection to obedience. Yet even at his lowest, God used him once more. Judges 16:28 says, "Then Samson called to the Lord, 'O Lord God, please remember me.'" That prayer turned his defeat into redemption. Your strength is not lost, it's simply being redirected. You have a mission. It's why you feel this tension. You've been chosen to awaken something ancient, something divine. And the moment you take back control of your energy, you shift the spiritual atmosphere around you. Your decisions become weapons. Your discipline becomes revelation. You begin activating dormant gifts, spiritual sensitivity, insight, creativity, clarity, and aligning with divine timing. Let me tell you about Mariam, a quiet nurse from Nairobi. For years she battled with late-night addictions no one knew about, compulsions masked by smiles and service. One night, in total exhaustion, she deleted every app that pulled her into that cycle and whispered, "God, if you want me, take over." That same week, 3 patients she cared for confirmed her calling with prophetic words. Today, she leads midnight prayer circles with healing power that silences rooms. She never shouted, she just surrendered. Her energy, once scattered, is now sacred. And then there's the story of Terry Crews, a well-known actor and former NFL player. Many admire his strength and charisma, but few know the depth of his internal battle. He publicly shared his addiction to pornography and how it nearly destroyed his marriage. Through transparency, therapy, and faith, he rebuilt his life. He once said, "My strength is in my ability to be vulnerable. When I finally surrendered my urges to something greater, I found true power." His journey is living proof that mastery doesn't come from denial. It comes from spiritual realignment. And you, God's chosen one, are in the middle of that same process. Your discipline will become your gateway. Your self-control will open divine doors. The more you master your energy, the more you rise into your assignment. No more shrinking, no more running. You were never meant to dim your light just to fit in. Behind your obedience, your authority is waiting. Behind your restraint, your gifts are sharpening. Behind your daily yes to God, the real you is waking up. And if this message lit a fire inside your soul, if it felt like you just snapped out of a long sleep, then this is your moment. Don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment 777 if you're claiming this message. Subscribe to Grateful to God, because what you're feeling isn't the end. It's only the beginning. And even though this walk may feel lonely at times, you were never meant to walk it alone. Heaven walks with you, and so do we. Chosen one, you've probably noticed it by now. The closer you get to truth, the more relentless the attacks become. As your spiritual awareness sharpens, as your discernment deepens, the battlefield intensifies. That's not a coincidence, that's warfare. The moment your soul starts waking up, the system, this matrix designed to keep you asleep, responds in panic. It throws louder distractions, stronger cravings, more sophisticated illusions. It doesn't want your eyes open. It wants you numb, overstimulated, and off course. Why? Because you're no longer harmless. You are a threat, not just to societal norms, but to the unseen forces that manipulate them from behind the curtain. The principalities Paul speaks of in Ephesians 6:12 know exactly who you are. They've seen your potential long before you recognized it yourself. And now that you're beginning to rise, they're trying everything to drag you back into slumber. But you weren't made for comfort. You weren't created to settle. You were born to pierce through darkness with clarity, to carry divine light into places most fear to go. And that light doesn't start in your voice or your hands. It starts in your essence, in your energy, in your sexual fire. That sacred life force within you was never meant to be spent recklessly. It was meant to create, to manifest, to restore. If they can hijack your energy at its source, they hijack your purpose. Take a look around. Lust is everywhere, disguised as fashion, humor, empowerment, even spirituality. Music seduces your mind. Ads flash body before meaning. Influencers sell skin before substance. They want you overstimulated but spiritually starved. They don't care if you feel fake pleasure as long as you forget your real power. But something inside you has started to resist, hasn't it? You're tired of being manipulated. You're no longer satisfied with temporary highs. You're starting to pull your energy inward. And when that happens, you begin rebuilding a temple that can't be shaken. What if those cravings weren't the enemy? What if they were signals? Messengers calling you to pay attention, not to punish you, but to teach you where your power leaks. You may have fallen into loops. You may have felt ashamed. But guilt was never God's language. Conviction, yes. Correction, absolutely. But not condemnation. Your desires aren't evil. They're divine energy being misdirected. The fact that you're even aware of them now means you've already begun taking your power back. Each time you whisper, "Not today," when the temptation hits, something shifts in the spiritual realm. It may not feel dramatic, it may look like nothing, but in heaven's eyes you're advancing, you're reclaiming territory, you're honoring your higher self. Many won't understand your path. Some will laugh at your discipline, roll their eyes at your celibacy, call your faith extreme. But don't let that shake you. They sense something in you, something they can't explain, something ancient, something royal, and that unsettles them because it calls their own sleeping spirit to attention. Let me tell you about Noelle, a young spoken word poet from Atlanta. At just 23, she vowed celibacy, not because of a rule, but because of a revelation. She said one night in prayer, she heard these words, "What you withhold from the world, I will multiply in the Spirit." From that day forward, her writing deepened. Her performances changed. People cried, not just because of her words, but because of the presence she carried. She didn't preach purity. She embodied it, and it made her magnetic. Even Jesus knew the power of withdrawal. Before his public ministry, he spent 40 days in solitude, hungry, tempted and tested, yet he came out full of power. Luke 4:1 says, Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, left the Jordan and was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. And when he returned, he moved with undeniable authority. Solitude wasn't punishment, it was preparation. You've likely been through your own wilderness, seasons where everyone seemed distant, moments when your soul longed for connection but found only silence. That wasn't rejection, that was refinement. In the absence of noise, you began to hear the voice of God more clearly. In the stillness, your spirit was being fortified. That sexual desire that surges within you, it's not there to destroy you. It's your mirror. It shows you where your boundaries are, where your attention drifts, where your flesh rises. And in that awareness, you are given a sacred choice. Will you react or will you rise? Will you feed your lower nature or fuel your divine assignment? Even actor and entrepreneur Devon Franklin, known for producing faith-based films, shared in interviews how honoring celibacy before marriage transformed his mental clarity and spiritual discernment. He and his late wife, Megan Good, became advocates for purpose-led relationships, emphasizing that real intimacy begins with discipline. His message is simple but radical in today's culture. Delayed pleasure creates eternal peace. And what about you? You've already come too far to go back. You've tasted clarity. You've glimpsed alignment. Your energy is sacred. Your body is holy ground. And every choice you make, whether in secret or seen, is shaping the person you are becoming. The next time temptation whispers, stand taller, don't shame yourself. See the moment for what it is, a test of your royalty, not your worth. Feel the urge, breathe through it, then choose spirit over flesh, light over shadow, destiny over distraction. Because you're not being destroyed, you're being built, stronger, purer, unshakable, and soon the very fire that tried to consume you will become the fire that fuels your purpose. Do you feel it stirring within you now? That subtle but unmistakable shift, the moment when temptation stops being a curse and starts becoming a mirror. When the craving that once tormented you begins to reveal its true purpose, not to destroy, but to awaken. This isn't weakness, this is alchemy. It's the hidden power of the chosen to turn lust into light, desire into destiny, and pain into a platform for divine power. And this sacred transformation is exactly what the enemy never wanted you to discover, because once you realize you hold the power to transmute what was meant to trap you, you stop playing the victim. You start becoming the vessel. You begin mastering your energy instead of leaking it. And when that happens, the world around you bends, your perception sharpens, your spiritual senses heighten, your presence becomes magnetic. Suddenly, divine connections begin to form, not just people but experiences, those long-awaited moments of clarity, alignment, and peace. The kind of love that doesn't drain you but ignites you, the kind of guidance that doesn't confuse you but confirms you, not the counterfeit, not the illusion, but what has always been written for you, now arriving because you are finally ready to receive it. And if you've wondered why your life has felt like a battleground, why lust, confusion, and temptation seem to follow you like shadows, it's because of what you carry. The enemy doesn't waste time on the ordinary. He targets those born with divine blueprints, those marked to awaken nations. That means you. Yes, you. Your energy is rare, your soul is ancient, but your potential remains just potential until you stop leaking it. Every time you give your sacred energy to a fantasy, a screen, a fleeting high, you exchange glory for smoke. You feed a system designed not to nourish you, but to dull you. And afterward, the same pattern follows. Emptiness, exhaustion, disconnection. That's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Because it's not random, it's engineered. They don't need to chain your body if they can enslave your soul. But here's what they never told you. Your sexual energy, the very thing they taught you to spend carelessly, is sacred. It is the raw force that mirrors the creative breath of God. Genesis tells us that God spoke the universe into existence. That same creative spark exists in you. When you withhold that power with divine intention, it doesn't wither. It transforms. It rises up your spine like holy fire. It opens your spiritual vision. It activates your gifts. It tunes your voice to heaven's frequency. You stop craving and you start creating. That's why the greatest prophets and sages, Moses, Daniel, Paul, were tested by desire before being trusted with destiny. Even Jesus, in his humanity, faced temptation in the wilderness, yet he emerged with power, not because he never felt desire, but because he never bowed to it. In Matthew 4:10, he declared, "Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." That moment wasn't just victory, it was proof of divine alignment. I once knew a man named Jalen. Just a year ago, he was addicted to adult content, hiding it under layers of performance and ministry. No one knew the storm he battled nightly, until one day, in the middle of a fast, he had a vision, chains breaking from his chest, and a voice that said, "What you fight in private will unlock freedom for others in public." Today, he leads a movement helping young men walk in purity. He didn't become perfect. He became powerful. Even the author C.S. Lewis, a man whose intellect shaped Christian thought for generations, once wrestled deeply with carnal temptation. But he wrote, "Chastity is the most unpopular of Christian virtues, but it's the key to freedom, not repression." He knew that resisting the pull of desire wasn't about legalism. It was about unleashing creativity, clarity, and calling. You've felt the fire growing lately, haven't you? Old temptations resurfacing. Desires you thought were behind you suddenly becoming louder. That's not regression, that's the threshold. Your soul is leveling up, and the storm is here to test your foundation. The enemy knows you're about to step into the next dimension of your purpose. He wants to knock you off balance before you rise. But here's what most don't understand. This battle isn't about trying harder. You were never meant to fight with willpower alone. You need alignment. That's why discipline is spiritual. Fasting isn't just a diet, it's a declaration. Breathing, praying, declaring truth over your body and mind. These are your weapons. You're not just saying no to lust, you're saying yes to royalty. Every time you choose sacredness over sin, you're not losing something, you're reclaiming something, a piece of your kingdom, a portion of your birthright, and soon you'll notice something odd begin to happen. People will sense it. Some will be drawn to you, captivated by your presence and peace. Others will recoil. Your light will disturb the darkness they still cling to. Don't shrink, don't explain, don't dim your flame to make others feel safe in their shadows. Your very presence exposes what they've buried. That's what the chosen are meant to do. Not conform, but confront. You weren't sent to blend in. You were sent to awaken a slumbering system. And now, that sacred fire within you, it's rising. Let it rise. Chosen one, have you begun to notice how the world always offers pleasure as the answer, as the cure for every ache you carry? Boredom, loneliness, sadness, even the emptiness you can't quite name. The algorithm says, swipe here, escape now. Society whispers, indulge and you'll feel better. But what if that ache inside you isn't something to fix or numb? What if it's sacred? What if it's the voice of your spirit calling you back home? You were never meant to drown your divinity in distraction, that restless hunger in your chest. It isn't lust. It's not weakness. It's the longing to remember. It's the echo of your soul pounding against the walls of your flesh, begging you to stop giving away your power to things that vanish by morning. That ache you feel is holy. It's the cry of your calling. Have you ever considered that God placed that ache in you for a reason, not to torment you, but to lead you? Ecclesiastes 3:11 says, "He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end." That longing you carry is a compass pointing to eternity. You've tasted what the world offers, flashing lights, fast highs, false comfort, and you've seen how it always leaves you emptier than before. That's not because you're broken, it's because your spirit can't be fed with imitation light. What nourishes most people poisons you. That's how you know you're different. Maybe you've sat in silence and asked, "Why me? Why do I feel this way when everyone else seems fine living distracted? Why am I so sensitive to energy, to sin, to silence?" It's because you're not wired like the rest. You were encoded differently. From the moment you were formed, your spirit carried a signature, a divine blueprint. You were born with a mission sealed into the marrow of your bones, and that mission doesn't align with mediocrity. It demands a higher path. It requires refinement, resistance, and sometimes pain. Did anyone tell you that purity would sometimes feel like isolation, that walking the narrow path might cost you comfort, approval, and ease? Jesus did. In Matthew 7:14, he said, "But small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it." You are one of the few. No one warned you that awakening would feel like breaking, that becoming whole would begin with falling apart. But that's the design. It's how your soul purges the programming. It's how you shed layers you didn't even know you were wearing. And at the heart of that purge is your desire, the raw, primal force this world has tried to hijack since your youth. The reason lust is such a powerful trap is because it mimics what your soul craves. It promises connection without covenant. It teases intimacy without depth. It opens your body while quietly closing your soul. It's artificial affection wrapped in spiritual anesthesia. But for someone chosen, that price is too high. Because every time you surrender to lesser urges, you delay the arrival of the greater version of yourself, the one God already sees. But hear this. This is not about shame. This is not a call to guilt. This is a call to glory. The urges you feel are not evil. They're wildfire, untrained but deeply sacred. They were never meant to be suppressed or feared. They were meant to be guided, mastered, and transformed. When you begin to channel that fire with intention, it becomes a weapon for light. It becomes fuel for healing, wisdom, art, and legacy. Can you see how God never wastes anything, even your struggle? Romans 8:28 reminds us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." Could it be that the very fire you once thought was your weakness is now becoming your strength? You feel deeply because you were created to create deeply. You crave intensity because you carry divine intensity. But the world taught you to waste that depth on surface-level pleasure. It trained you to spend your birthright for a moment of validation. It never told you that the craving was holy and that it could be transfigured into purpose. I want to tell you about Eden, not the garden, but a woman I met years ago, a former dancer turned mentor in Los Angeles. She told me there was a time when she couldn't go a single night without seeking touch from strangers. But inside, she felt numb, until one night, staring into a mirror after yet another escape, she felt God whisper, "What you give away in pieces, I want to make whole." That moment shifted everything. She began to fast, to write, to pray. Today, she leads young women into healing through poetry and prayer. Her story isn't about perfection, it's about sacred redirection. And then there's the story of Pope John Paul II. Before becoming Pope, Karol Wojtyła was a young actor in Nazi-occupied Poland. He lived through loss, war, and spiritual drought. But what many forget is that he spoke often about sexuality, not in fear, but with sacred reverence. He taught that desire, when aligned with God's truth, leads not to shame, but to sanctity. His theology of the body became one of the most powerful teachings on love and human dignity in modern history. He said, "The body, in fact, and it alone, is capable of making visible what is invisible, the spiritual and the divine. That is the mystery you carry. You weren't created to escape your body. You were created to reclaim it. That means rising from the ruins of false satisfaction. It means choosing transformation over comfort, because the fire that once threatened to consume you, it will now be the fire that forges you. So when the urge comes, pause, not in fear, but in awareness. When the craving rises, remember, it's not always about what you're missing. Sometimes it's about what you're becoming. You are not fighting darkness. You are learning to hold divine fire without letting it burn you. This is your refining. This is your return. And on the other side of the fire, that's where your true name waits. Chosen one, there's a hidden truth the world never wanted you to uncover, that your struggle with lust isn't weakness. It's a spiritual signal. It means your energy is sacred, your calling is rare, and something powerful sleeps within you that darkness fears. What if the very thing you've been battling was evidence of something heaven has marked? The more intense your battle, the greater your purpose. The louder the temptation, the more urgent your mission. Doesn't it make sense now why the enemy has worked overtime to confuse, distract, and seduce you? Because if you ever stood in your full alignment, entire systems would begin to fall. You were never meant to numb your pain with pleasure. You weren't born to escape the ache. That ache holds maps, messages, instructions, and sacred keys to your evolution. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." Could your pain actually be the place God draws nearest? But when you bury pain beneath endless scrolling, casual encounters, or mindless habits, you delay your breakthrough. You silence the voice of your higher self, the one already whispering reminders of why you came. Every time you resist temptation, you're not simply saying no to sin. You're saying yes to something greater. You're saying yes to divine clarity, yes to spiritual authority, yes to a future version of yourself that hell hoped would never awaken. And don't mistake this for a private victory. When that version of you rises, things shift. Entire bloodlines change. Generational curses snap like dry twigs. Cycles end because of your alignment. What if your obedience becomes someone else's deliverance? Think back to the moments when you gave in to desire. How did you feel afterward? Empty, numb, disconnected. That was never coincidence. Lust feeds on your light. It exchanges moments of pleasure for days of silence. It offers escape in exchange for your connection to the source. Proverbs 5:22 warns, "The evil deeds of the wicked ensnare them. The cords of their sins hold them fast." Has your light been dimmed because you traded it for what was never meant to sustain you? You weren't created to chase. You were created to attract, to call forth what already exists in the spirit. But manifestation isn't a feeling. It requires spiritual clarity, and lust clouds the signal. It muddies the waters. It interrupts your divine broadcast. Do you see it now? Every fall isn't just about shame, it's about disruption. Not punishment, but misalignment. When you fall, don't spiral, don't sink into guilt. Feel the disconnect, then return quickly and intentionally. Like David, who, after his greatest moral failure, cried out in Psalm 51:11, "Do not cast me from your presence, or take your Holy Spirit from me." David didn't lose God's love, but he lost intimacy. And intimacy with God is what fuels a chosen one. Here's the truth. You can't lose your anointing, but you can delay your awakening. And delay has a cost, not just for you, but for the people assigned to your light. Have you ever considered that there are souls waiting for the version of you that is healed, whole, and disciplined? They need your words, your wisdom, your breakthrough. And that version of you can only be born when you treat your energy like it's sacred, because it is. Let me tell you about Malik. He's a youth counselor now, but not long ago he was addicted to lust in secret. He thought if no one knew, it didn't count. But the depression grew louder, and the visions God once gave him became blurry. Until one night he fell to the floor and whispered, "I can't do this anymore. I want to feel clean again." From that night forward, he began a journey of fasting, praying, and rebuilding his clarity. Within months his voice returned, his dreams sharpened, his testimony began saving boys just like he had been. What changed? He stopped treating his urges like enemies and started treating his energy like fire. Even St. Augustine, one of the Church's greatest theologians, once lived enslaved by lust. Before his conversion, he confessed to craving worldly pleasure, praying, "Lord, make me pure, but not yet." But when his heart finally yielded, he became one of the most influential voices in history. His transformation is proof that spiritual fire can refine even the most flesh-bound soul. So no, your struggle isn't random, it's personal, it's targeted, it's calculated. But here's what the enemy fears most: your awareness. The moment you recognize this for what it is, not just a habit, but spiritual warfare, you begin to win. You begin to walk with your eyes open, your energy guarded, your choices deliberate. 2 Corinthians 10:4 says, "The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds." What if your daily self-denial is dismantling something ancient? Spiritual battles are never won with flesh. They're won with wisdom, with fasting, with prayer, with small holy decisions made in silence that echo loudly in heaven. What if every no in private becomes a yes in the spirit? This isn't about perfection, it's about pursuit. It's about recognizing who you are and walking like you believe it. You are chosen, your energy is holy, and your discipline is prophecy. So rise, one choice at a time. Chosen one, they've built a world designed to keep you running, so fast, so distracted, so overstimulated that you never stop long enough to see the machine behind the curtain. The system doesn't need to imprison your body if it can enslave your attention. It doesn't need to silence your voice if it can drown it in noise. The chains today aren't iron, they are invisible, and the most dangerous of all is the one you never realize you're wearing. They weaponize your eyes, the scroll, the flash, the allure of images carefully crafted to steal your focus, your purity, your purpose. It's not attacked with fire, but with subtlety. It comes in pleasure dressed as peace. But you're waking up. You're starting to see the rhythm of the trap. You're noticing how every time you reach a new level of spiritual clarity, the bait shows up, tailored just for you. That awareness, it's the real rebellion. To remain pure in a world that profits off your impurity. To protect your energy in a culture that feeds off your depletion. That is revolution. When you choose silence over stimulation, discipline over indulgence, vision over vanity, you become dangerous because you're no longer programmable, you're no longer asleep. Have your dreams been changing lately? Have you noticed how night after night seems to echo something deeper, like old temptations wrapped in new forms? Why do you think certain desires return stronger right when you're finally gaining spiritual ground? The Bible answers this in 1 Peter 5:8. Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. As your light grows, the shadows grow desperate. They disguise themselves as nostalgia, as comfort, as satisfaction, but they carry the scent of sabotage. Have your nights felt heavier, more vivid, like old desires are clawing at the edges of your peace? That's not imagination, that's resistance. When your soul starts to ascend, the shadows begin to panic. They don't leave quietly. They return disguised, whispering through old temptations, resurfacing as urges you thought were long buried. But this isn't just lust. This is spiritual interference. Paul wrote in Ephesians 6:12 that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. This battle isn't happening just in your body. It's happening in frequency, in vibration, in alignment. The closer you move toward divine power, the more desperate the interference becomes, because they know. They know what happens when a chosen one breaks free. They know that your next level carries influence, divine protection, and the kind of spiritual weight that alters atmospheres. Your very presence can disturb what once ruled the room. That's why the test feels more intense. You're not being punished. You're being prepared. You are stepping into a realm where your aura speaks before you do, where your energy convicts before your words ever leave your lips, and that terrifies darkness. But not every urge you feel belongs to you. That's crucial to understand. Some desires are planted, whispers sent through music, through emotions you haven't fully processed, through screens you didn't mean to look at. Have you ever felt a sudden pull towards something you thought you'd already overcome? Something you didn't even desire until it was placed in front of you. The enemy doesn't always show up with horns. Sometimes it arrives as a suggestion, a passing image, a nostalgic craving, something that feels familiar but isn't aligned. You're not broken for being tempted. Even Jesus in the wilderness was tempted, but he didn't fall because he knew what to guard. He didn't just resist, he responded with truth. Matthew 4:10 says, "Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." That wasn't just a command. It was a reminder of focus, of spiritual authority. You must now take that same posture. Guard your gates, the eyes, the ears, the mind. Each is a sacred portal. Each one leads to your spirit. And when you let something in, it either builds your temple or breaks it. Are you watching what nourishes you or what numbs you? You weren't created to be a sponge. You were designed to be a sanctuary. Consider Cardinal Robert Sarah, a Guinean Catholic cardinal known for his powerful silence and spiritual insight. In his book, The Power of Silence, he writes, "The devil's greatest victory today is to have infected us with noise, to make us forget the essential." Sarah, a man who lived through war, persecution, and spiritual drought, chose silence as his weapon. He believed that only when the noise is silenced can the soul hear God again. Are you willing to choose that silence? And listen, let me tell you about Kaelan. Just last year, Kaelan was deep in the nightlife scene, successful, admired, and completely lost. Every night he'd return home from another party, another fleeting thrill, only to stare at the ceiling with an unshakable hollowness. Until one night, he turned off his phone and lit a candle. He sat in silence. Hours passed. Then tears came, not from guilt, but from a remembering. He hadn't prayed in years, but his spirit did what his mouth couldn't. Since then, he's been rebuilding, protecting his gates, living slow, choosing spiritual discipline. And people say when he walks into a room now, something shifts. Not because he preaches, but because he radiates. That's alignment. That's what happens when temptation is no longer your master. You are not just here to resist sin. You are here to reclaim power, to alchemize desire, to take lust and forge it into leadership, to take passion and shape it into prophecy, to turn every craving into a compass for calling. That's not suppression, that's mastery. The chosen don't run from their urges. They stand in the middle of them, breathe deeply, and rise. When you do this, you're not just fighting for your purity, you're anchoring heaven to earth through your vessel. You're proving that self-control is not weakness, it is divine strength clothed in flesh. So, when the wave hits again, and it will, don't shame yourself. Don't run. Breathe, observe, pray, transmute. Remember, This is not the end of you. This is the edge of you. Beyond it lies the realm of spiritual authority. And that's where you're going now. You, chosen one, are not here by chance. You're here because your soul recognizes the sound of truth when it calls, quietly, urgently, unmistakably. And this truth isn't for everyone. It's not for the crowd seeking comfort, nor for the ones still chasing validation. It's for you, the one who, even in moments of weakness, can feel the weight of divine responsibility pressing gently but persistently on your chest. There is a sacred reason your desires have been under siege. The battle you feel within isn't madness, it's spiritual warfare. Even when you fall short, your calling is untouched. Heaven doesn't cancel you when you stumble. You are marked, etched into eternity, with a signature only angels and demons can recognize. This conflict between your craving and your calling is not shameful. It's proof. Proof that you were chosen for something that terrifies the darkness. Have you ever wondered why your thoughts feel divided? Why your flesh pulls one way while your spirit strains for higher ground? What you're experiencing is not confusion, it's the collision of timelines. Your past survival self is clashing with your ascending, awakened self. The old you, molded by trauma, culture, and fear, is resisting the divine upgrade. You are being refined in the fire, not to be punished, but to be purified. This is what happened to the prophet Isaiah when he stood before the throne of God. An angel touched his lips with a burning coal, cleansing him before he could speak for heaven. Isaiah 6:6-7. That same fire is reaching for you now. And yes, it hurts. That fire shows up as inner unrest, frustration, agitation, sleeplessness, or a strange silence that pierces through your distractions. It interrupts your scrolling. It makes your usual pleasures feel strangely empty. This isn't ordinary boredom. This is sacred discomfort. This is divine agitation, the Holy Spirit shaking your soul awake. Let me tell you about Layla, a painter who used to numb her pain in temporary lovers and fleeting highs. But one night, after another cycle of regret, she fell to her knees and cried, "God, if you're real, take this desire away." The next morning, she woke up not void of desire, but redirected by it. That's the key. God rarely removes your fire, He sanctifies it. What was once lust became longing for purpose. Today, she paints visions she sees during prayer, and collectors line up not just for the beauty, but for the power they feel emanating from the canvas. You too weren't created to mimic a broken world. You were designed to break generational strongholds, to dismantle lies coded into your very DNA. You felt it, haven't you? That quiet knowing there's more to life than numbing yourself with noise. That's because God is waking up ancestral codes within you, old blueprints hidden beneath years of conformity. When you choose spirit over impulse, when you say no to temporary pleasure for eternal reward, you unlock another chamber in the temple of your true self. But with each unlocking comes resistance. People you love may feel uncomfortable around you. Some may say you've changed. Others will try to pull you back into the version of you that made them comfortable. Let them go. Jesus himself said, "No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for service in the kingdom of God." Luke 9:62. Your forward motion isn't cruelty, it's calling. There was once a man named Elijah, a quiet but brilliant speaker. Not long ago, he was caught in a cycle of lust and shame, convinced he'd never be clean enough to be used by God. But after a silent retreat in the mountains, where he fasted and wept and wrote letters he'd never send, Elijah returned to his city carrying a new authority. Now people ask him where he got his wisdom from, and all he says is, "It came from my silence." That silence was where God reshaped his desires. This process you're in, the memory, the pressure, the temptation, it's all a form of divine training, and it's not in vain. You're not broken, you're remembering. that remembering hurts because it tears through false peace and demands the death of your distractions. But you're not dying, you're becoming someone heaven has always seen, even if the world hasn't yet. The temptation will whisper, it will come dressed in relief, escape, pleasure. But behind that mask is a thief, and it's after your oil, your anointing, your clarity. If only you could glimpse what waits on the other side of your self-control, your whole being would tremble with urgency. You would sprint through the wilderness, not out of fear, but with hunger, for discipline is not deprivation. It is protection. It is preparation. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "You are not a body. You are a soul. You have a body. When you let your soul lead, your body follows in peace. When your spirit is king, your desire no longer controls you. It serves you. That's when you're no longer chasing temporary highs because you've been introduced to eternal heights. You are not here to be average. You are here to walk through fire and come out holy. And that war inside you, that's just proof you're still in the fight. And the fight means the flame has not gone out. Heaven still recognizes you, chosen one. Chosen one, there is a holy reason why your path has felt more crushing, more consuming, more complex than the paths of those around you. The cravings that haunt you don't merely visit, they invade. The loneliness that surrounds you isn't just quiet, it echoes. And the pressure you carry doesn't just weigh you down, it shapes you. Why is it that your inner war started so early, even before you could name it? Why did the world come for your innocence before you even discovered your identity? It's because you were never called to live a standard life. You were born for divine impact. You're not being trained for comfort. You are being forged for eternity, and forging requires fire. Your destiny demands a version of you that the world has never seen, a version that heaven has been patiently preparing behind the scenes of your struggle. Think of David, the shepherd boy turned king. Before he ever held a crown, he faced lions, bears, and a giant named Goliath. Those battles weren't random. They were spiritual dress rehearsals for his reign. 1 Samuel 17. Just like him, every temptation you faced, whether it came wrapped in lust, self-sabotage, or addiction, has been part of your training ground. You may not have known it at the time, but the spiritual realm did. Heaven saw your capacity, and so did hell. That's why the attacks came early and hard, not because you were weak, but because you were dangerous. They tried to program you before you could awaken, through shame, through rejection, through seduction masked as love. They laced your earliest memories with lies to distort your design before you could discover it. But even through the chaos, there's one thing they could never reach: your essence, the indestructible core of you, that divine frequency that won't be silenced. Even after you fell, even after you gave in, even after you covered yourself in guilt and hid your gifts from the world, it still burned. The call still whispered. It didn't condemn you. It waited. Because God doesn't cancel chosen ones. He calls them again, and again, and again. Let me tell you about Jonah, not just the prophet swallowed by a great fish, but the man who ran from his assignment out of fear. Even when he tried to flee, God orchestrated storms to bring him back. And after everything, disobedience, near death, isolation, Jonah still delivered the message that saved a city. Jonah 1-3. Your mistakes haven't disqualified you, they've refined you. What you thought was failure was actually realignment. And in our time, consider Dr. Miles Monroe, the Bahamian pastor and leadership mentor. Before becoming globally known, he battled shame, poverty, and rejection. But instead of being broken by his past, he transfigured it. The greatest tragedy in life, he said, is not death, but a life without purpose. You, chosen one, were not meant to be a tragedy. You are becoming a testimony. You were never meant to kill your desires. You were called to sanctify them, to take that raging fire within you and aim it like a weapon toward righteousness. Lust wants to enslave you, but the Spirit of God wants to crown you. Can you feel the shift in that? Your fire is not sinful, it is sacred. It only needs your surrender to be shaped. There was a young man named Elias, whose past was filled with casual encounters and endless emotional spirals. But after attending a silent prayer retreat, he felt something crack open. He realized he didn't need to numb the hunger inside. He needed to redirect it. That same intensity he once gave to lust, he now gives to intercession. And people come to him for prayer, not because he's perfect, but because they feel something eternal in his words. That's what happens when desire becomes devotion. You are not alone in this battle, but you are one of the few courageous enough to fight it from the inside out. Few are willing to stare down their shadow and speak with conviction. You don't own me anymore. That is not weakness, that is war. That is you reclaiming territory hell tried to steal. The world wants you scattered, distracted, addicted to flashes of pleasure that fade within minutes. But you were wired for something deeper. You were designed to be focused, powerful, holy, to create from overflow, not desperation, to love from a full cup, not a fractured heart. Jesus walked in that fullness. Even when tempted in the wilderness, he did not yield. Matthew 4. He replied to every temptation with truth, not reaction. You are being taught to do the same. You're learning to guard your energy like royalty, to command a room without saying a word, to walk in a presence that shifts the very air around you, not because you seek attention, but because your spirit is no longer leaking. It is leading. You've crossed the threshold where impulse no longer rules your life. You are now governed by purpose, and that kind of authority can't be faked. It can't be bought. It must be forged in secret, in suffering, in the sacred spaces where you chose discipline over destruction. What if everything you've survived was proof that you are ready to reign? That the very force that tried to ruin you will become the platform God uses to elevate you. You're not just surviving anymore. You're remembering, you're returning, you're rising. And heaven has never looked away. Chosen one, you've always carried a knowing. Even when you were young and the world felt loud and confusing, something inside you whispered that this wasn't all there was. While other children were absorbed in surface things, you noticed the silence beneath the noise. You watched people's eyes not for beauty, but for depth. You weren't looking to impress, you were trying to understand. And in that search, you saw behind the curtain, even if you didn't yet have the words to describe it. You were awake in a world that seemed half asleep. That awareness made you different, and they sensed it. Teachers, friends, even family, many of them tried to tame what they couldn't name. They asked you to lower your voice, to follow the rules, to settle for less. They told you to fit into their boxes and color within their lines, but your spirit disagreed. Deep within, you held a sacred defiance, because your soul remembered. Even before your mind understood, your soul knew. You were sent here for more. And now that your awareness has begun to bloom, the resistance has intensified. That's not coincidence, it's confirmation. Spiritual warfare doesn't strike randomly. It increases the moment you begin to awaken. The forces of darkness don't waste energy on those who pose no threat. But you were born to rattle realms, to stand in a room and stir hearts just by being authentic. You carry the frequency of breakthrough, and hell has known it longer than you have. This is exactly why lust was sent after you. Not to satisfy, but to sabotage. Not to comfort, but to confuse. Because if the enemy can distract the chosen, the light begins to flicker across entire bloodlines. When a chosen one forgets their power, entire generations remain bound. That's the strategy. Not just to harm you, but to delay the awakening of many through you. But when you return to your focus, When you begin to reclaim your body, your time, your energy, you become a danger to darkness. You become what you were always meant to be, a living mirror that reflects truth so clearly that it shatters illusions. Jesus said, "The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light." Matthew 6:22. You were designed to radiate that light, not just to glow, but to illuminate the paths of others. But the world has built a system to sedate you, a culture of endless scrolling, surface-level thrills, and cheap substitutes for true connection. Most people don't even realize that what they call freedom is often just a polished form of bondage. Think of Solomon, a man gifted with divine wisdom, but even he fell when seduced by women who served other gods, 1 Kings 11. It wasn't the lust itself, it was what that lust led him to forget. You felt that same pull. You felt what it's like to be caught in the loop of craving what cannot satisfy. It's not just physical, it's spiritual amnesia. And this deception isn't always dark. In fact, it's most dangerous when it looks harmless. That's how the serpent approached Eve. Not with fear, but with fascination. Not with poison, but with persuasion. And just like that, humanity was disconnected from its source, not by a sword, but by a suggestion. There's a woman named Clarissa, a successful wellness coach, whose story I'll never forget. On the outside, she was thriving. Fitness, finances, fame. But every night she numbed herself with escapism disguised as empowerment. One day, after a failed relationship that mirrored every wound she thought she'd healed, she went silent for 30 days. No phone, no distractions, just prayer and fasting. And it was during that sacred quiet that she heard God say, "The power isn't in your image, it's in your surrender." Today, her voice shakes rooms not because she shouts, but because she carries stillness. Her fire no longer consumes her, it guides her. This is your calling too, to discern the real from the counterfeit, to see past the glitter and feel the substance. You're not being punished, you're being prepared. You are in spiritual boot camp. And every craving, every temptation, every test you've survived has been developing your mastery. Not the kind of mastery that makes you emotionless, but the kind that lets you feel the fire without letting it consume you. Do you realize how rare that is? To feel everything deeply and still choose discipline. To walk through temptation and still emerge holy. That is not weakness. That is not denial. That is resurrection. Pope Benedict XVI once said, "The world offers you comfort, but you were not made for comfort. You were made for greatness." Chosen one, you were not made for passive pleasure. You were designed to be a vessel of power and purity. And when you begin to walk in that truth, everything changes. Your presence starts to speak before your mouth does. Your silence becomes an atmosphere. Your decisions create ripple effects in the spiritual realm. This is not a journey to avoid desire. It is a calling to elevate it, to consecrate it, to transform it into something that builds instead of breaks. You are not here to be reactive, chasing dopamine and drama. You are here to be intentional, loving from overflow, leading from truth, and creating from a place that is eternally anchored. You are not lost. You are being sharpened. You are not broken. You are being built. And the power growing inside you is no longer negotiable. Chosen one, there's a holiness buried within your sensitivity. While others move through the world numb, you feel it all. You don't just process thoughts, you embody them. Emotions don't merely pass through your mind. They vibrate through your bones, settle in your chest, stir your spirit, and ripple through your soul. This depth of feeling isn't a weakness. It's a spiritual technology, an advanced radar designed by heaven itself. Your sensitivity was never meant to be silenced. It was meant to guide you. You were wired this way so you could perceive what others miss. You notice energy shifts in a room. You discern hidden motives in someone's smile. You sense when something sacred is happening, even if no one else is paying attention. This isn't imagination. This is prophetic perception. But with that gift comes a cost. Because when your senses are open, you don't just receive light, you also feel the shadow. You absorb others' pain. You carry atmospheres. You detect truth. But you also attract spiritual interference. And if you're not anchored in God's truth, your sensitivity becomes an open gateway. And desire, especially lust, uses that gateway to slip in undetected. Have you ever noticed that lust doesn't attack when you're strong? It waits, it studies, it enters in moments of doubt, in seasons of weariness, in the silence of longing. It doesn't need to destroy you completely. It only needs to distract you briefly. Because a single lapse in alignment can delay divine timing for years. And the enemy doesn't need your soul. He just wants your schedule. If he can slow your steps, he can alter the people waiting on your breakthrough. But now your eyes are open. Now you know the game. The desire that pulses through your body isn't merely chemical, it's spiritual data. It's revealing where your attention is leaking, where your power is scattered, where your soul still cries for healing. Every craving contains a message. But you must become fluent in your own spirit to understand it. This is no longer about suppression. This is about interpretation. In the book of Proverbs, Solomon writes, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." Proverbs 4:23. Your heart is not just a feeling center, it's a command center. And when pain goes unprocessed, it distorts the signals your heart sends out. That's when lust enters, not as an enemy, but as a counterfeit comforter. It wears the face of what you lost. It promises healing, but delivers a heavier chain. Let me tell you about Micah, a quiet man with a powerful call on his life. For years he struggled with waves of shame after each emotional crash. But one day, instead of resisting the desire, he asked, "What wound is this really pointing me to?" That simple question unlocked everything. He remembered a moment as a child when he felt abandoned, forgotten. That moment became the root of his craving for affirmation. Once he faced it, the power of that lust began to fade. It didn't vanish overnight, but it lost its grip, because truth broke its disguise. And that's your assignment now, not to fight blindly, but to inquire with holy curiosity. What are your cravings really pointing to? What have you been trying to receive through temporary pleasure that only eternal presence can provide? We see this same pattern in the life of the Samaritan woman at the well, John 4. She came searching for water, but Jesus saw beneath her surface thirst. He exposed the true longing, the desire for connection, for identity, for truth. He didn't shame her. He offered her living water. That's what God offers you now, not condemnation, but clarity. Even in our modern world, this principle remains. Brené Brown, a research professor and inspirational author, once said, "You either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and hustle for your worthiness." Many are hustling, chasing validation, masking wounds with pleasure. But you, chosen one, are called to own your story, not edit it for approval. You are called to heal, not perform. And healing begins when you stop avoiding your triggers and start decoding them. When you understand that behind every intense desire is a narrative, the ache of something unmet, unseen, unspoken. Lust becomes a costume that hides grief. But grief, when given to God, becomes transformation. This is the real spiritual work. Not just saying no to temptation, but asking, why does this keep knocking? What is it trying to offer me that I haven't yet received from the source? That kind of introspection rewrites your neural pathways. It renews your mind, just as Paul speaks of in Romans 12:2. It sanctifies your thoughts until the craving becomes revelation. And in that moment of awareness, you take your power back. You no longer crave attention, you radiate presence. You no longer chase escape, you abide in stillness. You no longer bow to the altar of momentary pleasure because you've remembered that the kingdom of God is within you. This is the sacred reversal. This is how you become untouchable, not by denying your fire, but by mastering it. You are not broken. You are being rebuilt. You are not lost. You are locating yourself again. And every time you understand your desire, instead of being enslaved by it, heaven applauds in silence, and the darkness retreats in defeat. Because you, chosen one, just took another step toward becoming exactly who you were created to be. Chosen one, you are not broken. You are becoming. You are shedding skins that no longer hold your identity. You are outgrowing thought patterns that once kept you small. And every time you say no to the lie, no to the trap, no to the illusion, you rise again. More stable, more radiant, more in tune with the divine frequency you were created to carry. That is you returning to your throne. Not as someone seeking to dominate, but as someone learning to steward power with purity. This is why your life looks nothing like theirs, why your path feels heavier, and why your wrestle is often unseen. You cannot compare your battles to theirs, because they weren't assigned your mantle. They weren't given the same spiritual keys. You were called to carry something sacred that would break if entrusted to the unprepared. Your wrestling is not a sign of failure, it's a mark of authority being forged in secret. Consider Jesus in the wilderness. Before he healed the sick or walked on water, he was led by the Spirit into isolation. There he faced every human temptation and overcame, not by might, but by the word. Matthew 4:1-11. Just like him, you've endured your own wilderness, and while others played, you prayed. While others slept, you stayed awake, trembling, weeping, choosing obedience in silence. That's not fragility. That's spiritual resilience. And make no mistake, your battles have never been random. The level of temptation you face mirrors the magnitude of your calling. Your urges have been stronger because your assignment is greater. Why do you think the enemy came for you so early? Why do you think comfort has always come with a cost? Because there are unseen forces, ancient systems, shadow entities that benefit from keeping you asleep. They fear the moment you remember who you are. That's why the distractions feel custom-made. They come dressed as comfort, yet carry compromise. They mimic love, but breed confusion. Because if they can't destroy you outright, they'll dilute your focus. And diluted focus is all it takes to derail destiny. But now, your eyes are opening. Your discernment is sharpening. You're beginning to feel the difference between what feeds your spirit and what only feeds your flesh. You've realized that not every good feeling is godly, that not every open door is divine, that pleasure is not always peace, and excitement is not always alignment. This is spiritual maturity, the sacred ability to feel before you fall, to pause before you pounce, to know that just because something doesn't look like a trap doesn't mean it's not one. What once came in the form of lust now comes in the disguise of opportunity. What once screamed now whispers. But you, chosen one, are learning the language of silence. You can hear the warning in a glance. You can feel dishonor in a compliment. You are no longer living by what is seen. And with every moment of clarity, you gain more ground. Each time you choose alignment over impulse, you rewire your reality. You're not just guarding your energy to feel better, you are stewarding a legacy. The choices you make now echo through generations. Your obedience is opening doors for children not yet born. Your refinement is restoring bloodlines that haven't known peace in centuries. Let me tell you about Jeremiah, a youth when he was called, overwhelmed by the weight of his assignment. Yet God told him, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I set you apart." Jeremiah 1:5. Just like him, you were consecrated before your first breath. Your existence is part of a redemption plan much larger than your feelings. And even in our world today, there are echoes of this truth. Viola Davis, the award-winning actress, once said in an interview, "You can't be hesitant about who you are." She didn't just become a star, she became a force because she confronted her wounds instead of running from them. Your path requires the same. You're not meant to dim your fire, you're learning to direct it. There was once a man named Samuel, raised in a family that normalized dysfunction, addiction, and silence. But one night, after years of cycling through lust and escape, he heard a still voice say, "This ends with you." That night he wept on his apartment floor. It wasn't a perfect moment, but it was a turning point. Today, he mentors young men to reclaim their bodies and voices. His story didn't need to be flawless. It only needed to be faithful. And so does yours. You've been walking through fire that would have swallowed others. You've endured pressure that would have crushed weaker vessels, but you're still here, sensitive, spiritual, alert. You're still choosing light. You're still saying yes to growth. That's not perfection. That's power. You no longer bow to every craving. You no longer chase every spark. You've learned that not all heat is holy and not all passion is permission. Now you move with precision. You conserve your fire. You protect your vision. Because you finally understand, you are not just healing for you. You are healing for the thousands tied to your obedience. Those generational chains, you're breaking them right now with every choice you make. This is who you are, chosen one. And nothing can stop what's already been written in heaven about you. Chosen one, you are the anomaly the enemy couldn't map, the one they never expected to endure the fire, let alone rise from it with healing in your hands and power in your eyes. You are not just someone who survived. You are someone who alchemized every scar into a source of strength. Every wound has become wisdom. Every weakness now a weapon. Every time you fell, you were unknowingly gathering the very material that would one day form your ministry. You were never designed to fit in, and that truth runs deeper than rebellion. It runs into divine purpose. Your very presence disrupts comfort zones, exposes hidden cycles, and convicts what others have managed to ignore. Where others keep peace with dysfunction, you carry the fire of interruption. You were sent here to disturb the silence that has allowed generational bondage to go unchallenged for too long. Your life is a holy rebellion against spiritual sleep. That's why the attacks on you have always felt surgical. They're not random, they're targeted, because the battle has never just been about your habits, it's been about your harvest. You are not being fought because you're broken, you're being fought because you're becoming dangerous to darkness. As the Apostle Paul said in Ephesians 6:12, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world." That battle is not imaginary, it knows your name. The enemy doesn't wage war against the comfortably lost. He wages war against those who are waking up. The moment you began to question what others accepted, the moment you sensed something deeper pulling you out of numbness, that's when the warfare intensified. Because what you're carrying is disruptive. It threatens the systems of oppression that thrive on your confusion. And that war, it's not only over your body, it's over your capacity. It's about the oil you haven't yet poured, the words you haven't yet spoken, the hands you haven't yet laid in healing. It's about the generations that are tied to your voice, the territory that is meant to respond to your authority. If the enemy can keep you cycling in temptation, distracted by surface pleasures, then you'll never settle into your true seat of dominion. But every time you resist that urge, every time you say no to the frequency that used to enslave you, something holy happens. A fragment of your scattered self returns. A piece of your essence, once buried under years of soul fatigue and emotional noise, is retrieved. And that recovery, that's sacred. That's how you rise piece by piece, choice by choice. Some of you are now feeling the call to cleanse, not just in your body, but in your spirit. You're being stirred to purge the lingering residue of soul ties that were never yours to carry, to release the fingerprints of encounters that felt thrilling but left you fragmented. Even digital indulgences, images, voices, words are being brought to the surface for release. And yes, this process aches. It uncovers what lust tried to sedate. The ache of absence, the roar of loneliness, the silent scream of guilt you were too tired to confront. But when you sit with it, without numbing, without judging, something miraculous happens. Clarity begins to rise like dawn. Your vision sharpens. Your inner compass, once drowned by noise, starts to hum again with precision. You begin to recognize counterfeits by the way they make your spirit shrink. You no longer need external validation to know you're valuable. You're no longer seduced by how something looks. You're led by how it aligns. This is where your power begins to multiply. Not because you're flawless, but because you're fully present. And presence gives heaven permission to pour. You begin to receive again downloads, instruction, revelation. Divine ideas flow where addiction once lived. You enter rooms and atmospheres shift, not because of what you say, but because of what you carry. This is the anointing that only comes through the altar of obedience. A speaker named Nico Everett once said, "I started to build a relationship with myself that was based on who I truly was, not who I had learned to be." That's exactly what's happening to you now. You're unlearning the false identities the world taught you to wear. You're unlearning the seduction of survival. You're no longer shrinking to be loved. You're expanding to be light. There was once a young woman named Eden. She had a gift for healing others, but she kept returning to a toxic relationship that dimmed her glow. One day, after waking from a dream of being buried alive, she chose to walk away without closure. That morning, she wrote, "I will no longer rent out space in my soul to the uncommitted." Her spiritual life exploded. Within months, doors opened, her clarity returned, her voice was no longer shaky. It carried weight. That's what happens when you align with your divine self. You, chosen one, are beginning to live from that place. You feel it now, don't you? You can sense when a person carries confusion in their words, even if they speak sweetly. You recognize energy before it announces itself. Your intuition no longer whispers, it commands. Because you're not following trends, you're following the sound of your calling. And the world may not understand you, but heaven does. You're not being elevated for applause, you're being prepared for impact. And every time you choose presence over pleasure, clarity over chaos, purpose over impulse, you reclaim another layer of your divine identity. This is your becoming, and it's only just beginning. Chosen one, by now you know, this battle is ancient. It didn't begin with you, but it might be destined to end through you. The war you feel in your body, your soul, your mind, it stretches back through generations. Lineages filled with silence, compromise, addiction, shame. And yet, here you stand, not perfect but present, not unscarred but awake. That makes you the interruption. That makes you the weapon. You are the one your bloodline has been waiting for. Not because you have all the answers, but because you've stopped running from the questions. You're willing to confront the cravings that others concealed. You're willing to sit in the discomfort that others drowned out. You're willing to walk through fire, not to escape, but to emerge. And that willingness is dangerous. It terrifies what used to control you, because every time you say no to your lower urges, not out of shame but out of power, you reclaim a piece of your throne. Every private whisper of "not this time" shakes the atmosphere. Heaven hears it, hell fears it, and your soul remembers, I am not here to be ruled. I am here to reign, and reign you shall. not like the kings of this world, crowned by ego and praised for appearance, but as one entrusted by heaven. Your royalty is recognized not by robes, but by resonance. You govern with your presence. You influence with your frequency. You walk into rooms and shift them, not because of your status, but because of your sanctity. But here's the part few will prepare you for. Mastery is lonely. The higher you rise, the fewer voices you hear. Elevation requires separation. It strips away the false selves, the borrowed identities you used to fit in, to survive, to stay safe. God cannot bless who you're pretending to be, so he calls you into the quiet, not to punish you, but to reveal the version of you the world has never met, but heaven has always known. Look at Moses. He didn't receive his assignment in a crowd. It came on a mountain alone, in silence, in fire. Exodus 3. David was anointed long before he was accepted. Esther had to hide her identity before she revealed her purpose. You too are being formed in solitude, because only there can you hear the truth without distortion. The cost is real. You'll grieve connections you thought would last forever. You'll let go of patterns that brought temporary relief but permanent delay. You'll feel the ache of becoming, but in exchange you'll receive something eternal. Peace that no longer depends on approval. Clarity that no longer waits for consensus. Relationships that nourish, not drain. Assignments that resonate with your soul, not your insecurity. But don't be fooled. The temptations won't vanish. They'll evolve. They'll get clever. They'll show up not as vices, but as almost rights, almost aligned, almost holy. And the real test won't be obvious. It'll happen when something feels good, looks good, makes sense on paper. But your spirit whispers, this is no longer for you. And in that sacred moment of decision, your entire timeline pivots. What looks like a small no becomes a massive course correction. You collapse years of suffering in a single act of obedience. You open doors for your children that you never got to walk through. You cut the thread of a generational curse and weave something eternal in its place. This is what Paul meant when he said, I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest after preaching to others, I myself should become disqualified. 1 Corinthians 9:27. He wasn't talking about perfection. He was talking about purpose-led mastery. You're no longer driven by appetite. You're guided by assignment. Your frequency no longer screams, feed me. It declares, I am fed by the word. This is what it means to be chosen. This is the mark of spiritual maturity. You've stopped being impressed by appearance. You're now led by alignment. There's a man named Elijah, not the prophet, but a quiet music producer who once built beats in studios filled with compromise. He confessed that for years he'd numb himself with flings and fame, calling it freedom. But after losing his voice, literally, he went silent for 40 days. No recording, no performing, just scripture, fasting, and prayer. When his voice returned, it carried something new. Now when people hear his music, they cry, not because of the sound, but because of the spirit. That's what happens when a chosen one purifies their vessel. You stop echoing the world. You start channeling heaven. And that is where you are now. You're feeling things you can't explain. You're seeing beyond what others accept. You can walk into a room and sense if it carries life or loss. You feel the pull to delete, to release, to unplug, not to isolate, but to realign. This is your confirmation. If you felt something shift inside while reading this, if your spirit stirred, if your eyes welled, if a part of you that had gone silent suddenly sat up straight, then hear this clearly. You are not alone. You are not crazy. You are chosen, and your journey is sacred. Now is the time to rise, not with noise but with knowing, to reclaim what's been stolen, to walk boldly in who you really are. You are no longer asleep. You are no longer distracted. You are no longer available to the frequencies that drained your fire. So don't just scroll in silence. Don't just nod and move on. Activate. If this word lit something in your soul, like this video, let the algorithm of heaven see your agreement. Share it with someone you know is wrestling in silence. Comment below and declare it out loud. I am mastering my desires. I am chosen. Chosen one, if you've come this far, it's because something inside you refuses to stay silent. You've heard the call, felt the weight, and tasted the fire, and yet you're still here, still hungry for truth, still choosing growth. That alone is a mark of greatness. Your journey is sacred, your story is needed, and your presence carries more purpose than you know. So hold your head high, not in pride, but in remembrance of who you truly are. The path won't always be easy, but it will always be worth it. As you continue walking in obedience, mastering your desires, and protecting your energy, may clarity surround you, strength uphold you, and divine favor go before you. Don't leave this moment without responding. If this word resonated, let it be known. Like this video, comment below and declare your truth, and subscribe so you never miss another message meant for your awakening. Thank you for walking this path with us. You are chosen, you are loved, and your best days are still ahead. May God bless you and keep you always.